Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Your Dose, the podcast which shares stories of lived experiences to help people feel less alone and more connected. In this episode, I had the pleasure of sitting down with Lauren, a 23-year-old whose raw and honest account of recovering from ketamine addiction has gone viral on TikTok, inspiring thousands of individuals. Lauren opens up about what started as a fun escape with friends, spiraled into a life-altering addiction, ultimately leaving her homeless and struggling to rebuild her life. Lauren shares the profound impact addiction has had on her physical health, relationships, and sense of self, as well as a turning point that set her on her path to recovery. Now using her platform to raise awareness, Lauren offers heartfelt advice on the tools and mindset shifts that have helped her regain control of her life. Whether you're struggling, know someone who is, or simply want to understand more about addiction and recovery, this episode is a must listen. Join us for an inspiring conversation about resilience, hope, and the power of using your voice to make a difference. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Hi, Lauren. Welcome to the Your Dose podcast for the second time.
Hello.
If anybody, this was actually meant to be uploaded this week, but unfortunately we had some issues with recording. So fingers crossed today's a bit better. Let's pray. How are you, Lauren?
I'm good, thanks.
Whereabouts in the world are you at the moment?
I'm in Arbroath, which is in Angus, in Scotland.
And have you always lived in Scotland?
Yeah. I'm staying in Forfar at the moment, but I'm in Arbroath this morning.
And for the listeners, do you want to explain a little bit about who you are and what exactly you're here to talk about today?
Yeah, so I'm Lauren, I'm 23 and I'm a recovering drug addict.
So I actually came across Lauren on TikTok a few weeks ago, at which point I think you probably had half of the followers that you had now.
Yeah.
And you were sharing your journey specifically with ketamine addiction,
Mm-hmm.
which I thought was really relevant, very, very brave. And it seems like it's a huge issue in the UK at the moment, I'm sure in other parts of the world as well. Do you want to explain a little bit about that video that you made on TikTok and what it was about and why you decided to make it?
Yes. A few days before maybe about 5 days before I had uploaded that first video on the TikTok, I was made homeless, so I was placed in a hotel room, had taken a lot of drugs in those 5 days, wasn't speaking to anybody, had no contact with any family or friends or anything, just due to kind of what had been going on. And I'd been on the phone to the Samaritans kind of just in a moment of pure despair, just not knowing who to talk to or where to turn. And then I just decided to speak out loud and upload the video, and yeah, that was it really. I did not expect what happened to happen at all.
And what actually happened for anyone listening who's not
I think
seen
I
that
woke up
video?
and it maybe had 10,000 views, and I had a couple of messages and stuff, which I kind of expected it to get a wee bit of coverage, but more just maybe from people from the town where I'm from, and yeah, a couple of random messages, but I'm pretty sure the video's over 700,000 views now.
Which is crazy. And since
Yeah.
then, you've been posting pretty much every day, sharing your journey
Yeah.
in recovery. So, how long have you been in recovery for now?
So today is day 29, so almost a month.
Wow. How does that
Yeah.
feel? Did you ever think that that would be possible?
So I've not gone this long since the beginning of last year, but no, I don't know where kind of would have been if I hadn't started posting on TikTok, to be honest. A lot of people don't really understand it, like some of my family and stuff, they don't get it. But yeah, it's definitely, being in the hotel and stuff, it could have went two ways. I almost felt like the perfect opportunity to dive further into drugs and just go into pure self-deconstruction mode, but I'm glad that I've managed to sort of turn it around into something positive for myself, and then it's obviously a benefit if it's helping other people as well.
Exactly. And when did this whole addiction start? Do you remember the first time you ever took drugs?
I remember the first time, but I would say I was using recreationally probably for about, I was 17 or 18 when I first tried Ket, and I'm now 23. But I'd say it only really became an apparent issue when I reached my 20s.
And
I was just kind of partying and having a bit of fun to begin with.
So, at what point did it transition? Like, did you recognize that change from recreational use to becoming
I,
addicted?
I can recognise the change, but I wasn't under the impression that it was an issue. Everybody else was apart from me, kind of thing. It went from using when I was with my friends and out and stuff to me sitting in my room doing it on my own. But to me, at that point, I still was having fun. It didn't feel like an addiction. Yeah, people started to catch on, kind of thing.
And when you were using at like more of an addictive level, how much were you typically using a day?
Anything between 3.5 grams to 10 grams,
Wow.
just
That must,
depending on money situations.
yeah. And that was kind of my second question. Like, how much would that have cost, that
So for
amount?
three and a half, which is like a half Q, that's what it's called where I'm from, is £50, and a Q is 100. But you're £30 for a single gram. So to me, I was saving money. Get on math.
Yeah. And had you ever been in situations where you hadn't had the money and gone to like extreme lengths to try and get
Yeah,
drugs?
I was taken from like all my family, which was always people that I loved. But yeah, stealing money, got caught a few times. That's really why there was breakdown in relationships in my family.
And what are the relationships like with your family now that you've taken the step to
So
actually try and recover?
I've still not spoken to my mum. She's obviously feeling the most hurt because she's been dealing with this for a long time. But I've spoken to my gran. I've had a bit of contact with my stepdad, so things are kind of getting better. But to them, like, I've been here before, and it's always been sort of empty promises, and yeah, that's me done, and then it's not me done, or the lies that come with it. So obviously, trust can be rebuilt, but it takes a long time as well, and I understand that.
And does this time feel different to the last times?
It's obviously easy for me to say, yeah, and hard for other people to believe, but something feels different this time. I feel like I've
And
put too much out there to go back now.
do you know what? Like you said that your parents don't understand why you're putting things online. As someone who puts very vulnerable things online, I understand.
Mm.
And you're kind of like advocating for yourself by doing that, and you and others.
Yeah, it's definitely helping to hold myself accountable. I feel like I've got this wee like community of folk behind me, like checking in on me all the time. So it's really nice, especially when I've kind of felt so alone or like alienated in the whole situation.
And you have actually built like a pretty incredible community on
Yeah,
Instagram, including a WhatsApp group. Is that right?
Instagram,
An
Instagram group.
Instagram group. And what is the Instagram group? And have you just chatting there? Like, what sort of things do you do?
Yeah, so tried to keep it kind of as casual as possible, but there's people that are still in active use. There's people that are clean, and it's not all ket. It's predominantly ket users, but there's like alcoholics and cocaine users and stuff in there as well. But yeah, the girls just have normal chats, and then there's chats if people are struggling or strategies to kind of like help. So yeah, there's chat about everything, and it's honestly there's somebody up all the time, so there's somebody to talk to all the time if somebody needs it.
That's incredible.
It is really.
I mean, what are some of the messages that you've received from people? What's the most common thing that people say when they find you on TikTok?
People will share like their stories with ket addiction, or people are just looking for a bit of advice with some of the health problems that can come with it. What else? A lot of people ask me how to support somebody that's a drug addict, which that's probably the one that I find the most hard to answer because I've never had to deal with a drug addict. I'm the addict in the situation, so I do find it hard to answer because I'm the one that's been doing the hurt. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like people have struggled to support me, so I find it hard to give advice on that.
What would the advice be if you are able to give even some advice based on your experience?
To somebody struggling, like to support somebody in your family with addiction.
Yeah.
If I was to say one thing, it'd probably be to try and focus on something that's not the addiction and maybe ask, like, what's making them turn to drugs, because drugs isn't the problem, it's a solution for a short-term solution for a long-term problem, really. And it's a bad solution, but it's a solution nonetheless, for the person anyway. So to try and focus on, yeah, what's making you feel that way that you need to turn to drugs, what's actually going on with you, rather than fixating on the fact that they've got an addiction. because we don't need to feel belittled or alienated any more than we already do, because we know we've got issues. We don't need to be reminded all the time. Do you know what I mean?
And I think addiction is addiction no matter what it is. Like, just because it's ketamine, obviously that's perceived differently because of how we see ketamine, and it's a drug. But actually, our phones are drugs, food addiction. There's so many things that we can be addicted to. The cycle is exactly the same.
Yeah.
They always say that addiction is a disease. Like, it becomes like biological once after a while, because you actually start to withdraw from the drug and have biological effects physical effects that means that you have to take it again.
Yeah.
So I guess on that note, have you had any withdrawal symptoms since you stopped taking ketamine?
I wouldn't say I've had any physical withdrawal symptoms, but there's definitely long-term damage. I don't really know if ket's something that you get physical withdrawals from the same as you maybe would like cocaine or alcohol.
Yeah.
But it definitely does long-term damage to the body.
And what is some of the damage that it can do to the body?
One of the main things that I'm dealing with is the bladder. It totally ruins the inside of your bladder lining, shrinks the bladder walls. So I'm at the toilet all the time. I was peeing blood a lot. Like, you get this jelly stuff, which is your bladder lining coming out in your pee. So I've had quite a few appointments with urology and had cystoscopies and the lot. I was probably the youngest person in urology by about 60 years.
Wow. And when you were like in the worst moments, how much would you be going to the toilet a day?
It was always worse when I was like actively sniffing. So the worst I've seen it probably every 5 to 10 minutes.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, and you feel like you're absolutely bursting, but you're just doing a dribble.
There's nothing there.
Yeah.
And when you first saw like blood in your urine, or like the jelly bits, which is the lining of your
bladder, yeah.
What did you think? Like, did you think at that point, maybe this is a problem, I should stop?
So I'd been to the doctors quite a few times, and I was just kind of getting treated for UTIs, but it was down to me not being honest with the doctors. I was too scared to admit that there was drug use there. So they were just treating me for urine infections that I didn't have. I was still in denial at this point as well about what was going on. So yeah, the first time that I seen the blood kind of pouring from me, I thought that I was miscarrying. But I know a wee bit more about it now. There's such a limited
amount of
information online and stuff about what it actually is, and the doctors can't even really tell you exactly what it is because it's still new to them. Like the whole K bladder, the urologists are starting to see it more and more now, but yeah, there's still not a lot of information.
No, and I think in general there's not enough information around the long-term consequences of most drugs.
Definitely.
Like, so many young people take drugs, especially at university or in their younger years, to experiment, and whether it's at raves or music events, whatever it might be, and it seems like a fun time at the time, and then you don't really realize after that, like, you probably never thought that you would become addicted at the time when you were taking it with
you
your
never
friends.
think that it's going to be you. You never think that it'll be you, or that any of these symptoms or anything will happen to you, but it can happen to anybody, I'm afraid.
And if there was anything that you could tell the listeners about, like, misconceptions about ketamine, what would it be?
That it is addictive. I get a lot of comments saying, like, how can you get addicted to ket? It's impossible to get addicted to ket, kind of thing. And again, yeah, you can get addicted to absolutely anything. Anything that gives you that.
I've seen those comments.
Yeah, and it's always people with no profile picture or no followers or something. But yeah, it's an up and coming drug. It's still really quite new, but it's definitely addictive. There's been studies and stuff done, and they're testing the purity of it. So it's getting mixed with stuff like fentanyl and stuff, which is obviously highly addictive. You have no idea what you're sniffing. There's yeah.
And when you put your video online and spoke about something that's so vulnerable, so common, but like people don't talk about it, you're a young female. Like, how did that make you feel? Did you have you had any hate or anything since posting it?
It's not even hate, it's just people that kind of probably think that they're trying to be funny. Like, comments, again, it's always boys.
Ignorant.
Payday soon, love. You'll get another bag on payday and whatever. Like there's a line here waiting with your name on it, just stuff like that.
Good stuff.
I know now about like a couple of negative comments that have come kind of from the town where I'm from, but it's just like small-minded, narrow-minded, small-town mentality, to be honest. And it was always going to be expected.
And how has like ketamine affected your relationships? Have you lost people in the process of this journey of like recovery?
Everybody. My best friends, relationship with my mum, all my family. Obviously lost my boyfriend as well.
And have you spoken to them, any of those people? Like, obviously, I know you've not spoken to your mum, but have you spoken to any of the other people since you've been on this journey?
So I didn't see my best friend or her daughter for, I think it was like 6 or 7 weeks, but I've since seen her again. I've spoken to my ex-boyfriend as well. So yeah, people are starting to reach out more now. But it's just going to be a sort of long process of rebuilding bridges and stuff.
And what have those people done that you found really supportive so far in this journey?
To be honest, they've done absolutely everything that they could, but the best thing that they've done for me is leave me to figure it out by myself, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
I was just pushing boundaries all the time.
In what way would you have been pushing boundaries?
Like the lying, the stealing. I was just lying, like lies were just coming out of my mouth without me even realising. Like addicts are so selfish, and we're very well known for lying as well.
Yeah. And obviously you've been sober now for almost a month, which is incredible. But during this month, obviously we'll go on to the homelessness side of things in a minute. But I'm sure there might have been points during this period that you've maybe wanted to turn to drugs or something. Like, what is it that stopped you from doing it?
I'm not in my hometown. I'm only half an hour away, but I don't know anybody. And the homeless unit that I'm in, it's quite strict. Like there's cameras, there's staff on site all the time. I also blocked all the dealers as well. So out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. I can't say that there's not been urges, and the dreams that I've been having are crazy.
Really?
About drugs and about dealers, yeah. Somebody had commented on my post, if it can't get you when you're awake, it'll get you when you're sleeping, and that seems to be what's happening. Because you wake up and you feel like you've relapsed, or like you actually panic because it feels so real. But yeah, I feel kind of safe being out of my hometown. I don't know if I would be so far had I been living where I'm actually from, because it's just so accessible.
And it's the environment, isn't it, that you're used to. So you associate that environment with doing drugs and probably the people there. And like you said, it's like the ease of having it. Because we've not really touched on like the homelessness, only briefly at the start. Would you mind telling that story and sort of how you've ended up getting to the homeless? Like is it like a shared living situation?
Yeah, so things had me and my boyfriend had split up, and I had to move out just because, again, of what had been going on, the lying and the drug use. And I had to get in touch with the local council. I stayed in a hotel for 2 nights, which I had paid for, and then they placed me in another hotel, and I'm pretty sure I was in the hotel for like 7 or 8 days. I can't really remember the whole timeline. And then I got moved on the 23rd of December through to the homeless unit. And there was all sorts of thoughts going through my head, like, oh God, what kind of people are going to be there? I was scared, I was crying, because you kind of just get comfortable wherever you are. Although the hotel was not the best environment to be in, I just kind of felt settled there. And then, yeah, I was moved again. But the staff and everything are lovely. They're really, really helpful. And yeah, that's probably the safest I've felt in quite a long time.
And obviously there's staff support, and the shelter, like the homeless place itself is a safe space.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anyone else that you're in close communication with on this journey?
So I have a drug worker, but I've had him since the beginning of last year. He's been a massive support network for me through the whole thing. He actually said to me the other day, he was like, Lauren, before you posted that first video, you were in like cuckoo land. You were on your way out. Like, you were not on this planet at all. I didn't even think I was that bad before Christmas, but yeah, he's always been able to see right through me, kind of thing.
What do you think he meant by like cuckoo planet? What were you doing?
Just like the lies, like he knew, like I was trying to convince him that I wasn't using, but he knew. I was trying to convince myself that I wasn't using it and I didn't have an issue. It was just madness to look back on it all, to be honest.
So you've had this support, like this drug worker for like before this. So does that mean that there was a point previous to this where you have been in a situation where you went to someone about your addiction? Is that right?
So my family had kind of pushed for me to get some sort of professional help because they all knew what was going on. I knew what was going on, but I just wasn't ready to admit it. So me and my auntie went to the GP and I had a mental health referral put in, and then one of the local drug charities picked it up, and that's how I've then been put with him. So he's an ex-addict himself, not of the same nature or substance. So I think that's why I enjoy speaking to him so much, because he'll say that he sees like his characteristics in me and I see mine in him, kind of thing.
That's so nice. And how often
Yeah.
will you see him?
I see him in person once a week, and then he probably phones me like once or twice a week on top of that.
That's incredible. Like he must be watching you and your journey now, and he's got to feel different as well. And he's probably said that to you.
Yeah, he's a bit skeptical about the whole TikTok thing, just kind of like don't run before you can walk kind of thing, and just to be careful almost, because it can be a lot of pressure, kind of, which I understand as well.
Do you think you felt that pressure?
Yeah, especially with the messages and like feeling the need to respond to people, especially people that are struggling. But it's a lot. Like I probably get between 50 and 100 messages a day. Yeah. And I
That's
actually got
crazy.
banned from replying to them from TikTok, so I was replying too quick. But yeah, I want to be able to speak to as many people as possible. But I did put in one of my videos the other day about like people trying to respect a sort of boundary, because I've had a couple that were like really quite triggering in the way that they were sent. And obviously, like I'm only at this point, I'm only like 3 weeks clean or something, and it could be triggering for somebody that was 2 years clean, never mind just 3 weeks kind of thing. Just the context, like I was getting voice notes and stuff about people that were actively on drugs and didn't know what to do, and I'm like, there's nothing I can do really, is there? Like
Yeah,
you've done it now.
you're like 3 weeks
But
clean,
yeah,
like
like you can always tell in somebody's voice when they're on kit. So that was the part that was quite triggering for me.
really.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's definitely difficult. And I think it's
yeah,
about when you're posting like vulnerable things online, I think it's about being able to find that balance. And
yeah,
yeah, I mean, you've got to look after yourself, but then I guess in the same breath, this is probably something that's given you a focus and like a purpose at this
definitely.
time,
Yeah. I
because
mean, I'm not working or anything at the moment, so
that's
it
it.
does
Yeah.
keep me busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would like to work in this sort of sector in the future, obviously, in a couple of years maybe.
And in terms of things that you're doing, obviously TikTok's probably like the biggest thing that you're doing at the moment. But is there anything else that you've been doing throughout this recovery journey that's really helped you to stay on track?
I love like crafty things, listen to loads of podcasts, I'm reading a book about addiction. Everything seems to be about addiction at the moment, and my drug worker did say to me as well, like, although you're in early recovery, not everything has to be about your recovery. You're still allowed to go and enjoy normal things and do normal things,
Yeah,
which,
absolutely.
yeah, like he's like, it doesn't need to consume you, which for a while it was, but I'm trying to like make sure that I'm still like seeing friends and just having normal conversations, because it is like it's all I talk about, no matter who I see or where I'm going.
Yeah. I can imagine it's all consuming, which is like for you it is your world as well.
Yeah,
But almost having like that normality in what isn't normal right now, but trying to
yeah.
make it as normal as possible.
Yeah, everybody asks, especially now that I'm posting on TikTok, because people have kind of gone from knowing nothing to knowing absolutely everything about me. Like even people
Yeah.
that were sort of in my circle, I was just living this second life.
That they didn't know about.
Yeah, I mean, people probably had an incline, but not to the extent of how bad
They
things was
didn't
with
probably
like,
know
yeah, with
the
relationships
severity.
and like how much use and yeah, the physical damages and stuff. Like, yeah, I was quite good at. Well, I say I was quite good at hiding it. I was quite good at probably hiding my mental state, but yeah, it was very obvious that when I was on drugs.
So when you were taken and it was like in the worst stages, if you could do like a day in the life, what would it have looked like from the moment of waking up?
Yeah, so I actually did a video about this yesterday. When I speak about this, it would be when I was in my own flat, because that for me was the height of my addiction, when I had my own flat before moving in with my boyfriend. So I wasn't really sleeping at all at the best of times anyway. So yeah, as soon as I would wake up, if there was something there, then I would just start sniffing in the morning. And then I would be very quickly ringing the arse out of a dealer, trying to get something else dropped off or trying to make sure that it was sorted for that day. And wasn't eating, wasn't really looking after myself at all, in like hygiene respects. And yeah, that was it really. That was it. Lying in bed, sometimes watching television, but just
Just
taking
constant
taking it all
cycle.
day. Yeah. And it would get to the point where I wasn't even leaving the house to go and meet somebody. I would just have it posted through my letterbox and put under my doormat, and yeah.
And you were living in your own place at this point, not at home with mum and dad, right?
Yeah, yeah. I was still using drugs at my mum's, but I kind of moved out before she got the chance to kick me out, because that's the way that it was going. And then when nobody was allowed to tell me no, then it just got worse.
Yeah. And at the time, obviously, you've mentioned some of the physical effects, like most, obviously, the bladder issue is the one main physical effect that you've had.
Mm-hmm.
But can you remember how you felt mentally at the time when you were doing that?
I was just using drugs to feel nothing really. So for a long time, I just sort of felt empty. I take mirtazapine, which is obviously an antidepressant, but I don't feel depressed day to day. I've had like suicide attempts in the past, which I don't feel those kind of thoughts every day either. Yeah, I suppose I just felt empty. I felt sad, and I knew that like what I was doing wasn't normal. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, because people often talk about the dissociative effects of
Yeah,
ketamine out of like any other drug. It's a dissociative drug like that. That's literally the classification of drug that it's in.
yeah,
So you often hear about people taking ketamine to because it's the one drug out of all the drugs that you can literally escape
yeah.
reality.
Hmm.
Did you
I think
feel
that's
like
what's been
that?
hard about coming off of them as well. Is like I wasn't dealing with real life at all, and now I'm having to actually deal with real life and real feelings. So I restarted my mirtazapine last week as well, because my emotions have just been absolutely all over the place. All those emotions that I've kind of obviously been blocking out have come
Trapped
back
in?
with a vengeance. Yeah,
Did
which
you
isn't a
like
bad thing. It's better to feel something than nothing at all. But yeah, I wanted to
exactly?
feel nothing at all for a long time.
And when you were taking, this is like a really strange question, but I don't know, maybe when you were taking drugs and dissociating, and you're saying you wouldn't feel anything, does that mean like you couldn't cry, or could you still like get upset about things, or were you just completely numb to any emotion?
I definitely wouldn't be crying when I was actively using.
No.
Yeah, no, I think I was just completely numb. There would
Wow.
be times like I would maybe be using and then fall asleep because I was so fucked, and then yeah, I wouldn't even remember the hours before that kind of thing. I obviously grew quite a high tolerance. That's why I was using so much as well. There is times as well that yeah, I can't remember, and I would kind of come back around and there'd be a mess everywhere, like you're pure stumbling about.
And have you like blacked out in situations and ever been in any like trouble or ended up in hospital or
When
anything?
I have not been in hospital because of being blackout, but I've been in hospital because of the effects of the drug. And I
Really?
started when I was using, at the beginning, I would always end up in really vulnerable situations because I was mixing it with alcohol. So that was for like the first 2 or 3 years. I was going out to the pubs with my friends, and I would end up just lying on the street, taken home by the police. People phoning my mum to come and pick me up. Yeah, so that wasn't good. I was very, very, very vulnerable. I'm surprised that nothing worse ever happened in any of those situations. The police would follow my friends around. Um,
I think you're there. You go. Woo, perfect.
yeah,
I was worried then.
there we
Carry
go.
on. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, the police would follow my friends around if they knew that they'd been out with me, because I was always in a state. It's just embarrassing. So then I stopped drinking with it, and then that's kind of when it turned into me just sitting in the house and doing it. I knew that I couldn't do the both,
So,
and
do
for
you
for me,
think? Yeah. Do you think that mixing ketamine with another drug like almost enhances the effects or makes it worse?
I would say it makes it worse. Like for me, I would just usually end up in a K-hole, which is that blackout, like, yeah, where you've got no control over what's going on.
Yeah.
Some people can handle it, but I definitely couldn't.
Yeah. If you were to describe like K-hole and like, wow, it escalates from just, taking care and having maybe like a fun time. And then all of a sudden it's transitions into something where you can't move your body.
Well, there's been times when like I can't really describe what it feels like because you don't
It's
really feel
unique.
anything at the time, but there's like, whilst I've been at my boyfriend's, he'll have come through and tried to speak to me and I'm not responding. It's like, I don't even know that somebody's trying to speak to me or have a conversation with me.
And I guess if you're out at an event or like, in a bar or whatever, and you end up in a K hole, that again puts you in quite a vulnerable situation, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Because, and I think,
and that definitely happened. Like, I'd just be lying outside the pub door, like, on the ground, just fucked.
and was the aim to get into a K hole, or
No,
did it happen because it's just like that little bit extra over the
yeah.
top and then,
I
yeah,
enjoyed the feeling of, like, being
before?
on Ket and drinking, but I didn't ever want to get to that state because it obviously is embarrassing. And then you're ruining your friends' nights out. I stopped getting invited places, and yeah. In
Did
my
you
own
find
flat, maybe that was that was probably what I was trying to reach, but not whilst I was out.
Did you people talk about K-holes as being quite scary experiences? Some people love like that's the whole point of like,
Yeah,
taking to
that's
them is to get into that feeling. Was it ever scary for you? Like have you ever taken ket and been scared?
no,
Never.
no, probably not. No,
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think some people can have either like one or the other experience where like they either want to get into that or like they actually are actively enjoy being that in the K hole, and then other people
yeah.
would
I
like,
mean, I've woken up with a fear and stuff, like,
yeah,
oh,
what have I
what
done?
did
What
I
have I
do last
said?
night? But nothing that's ever really scared me as such. It's scary to look back on now, some of the states that I would get in and the way that, like, I just neglected myself. But yeah, not at the time. I didn't really care about anything, to be honest.
Yeah. And so far on like this journey, and obviously it's not just been the past, almost month, it's been way before this as well. And like I'm wondering whether there's been anyone in your life that you can pinpoint that's been really significant in your journey and supporting and helping you.
Yes, my auntie has always put in so much effort with me, and to be honest, I put her through the absolute ringer for a while, just because again I didn't want to accept the help. But she's always kind of been in my corner and done everything. And she's like, there was a period of time where I couldn't even phone the doctors for myself. I couldn't take myself. I lived 5 minutes from the doctor. Couldn't get myself there. She would come. She would drive half an hour to come and pick me up and take me. She would be my voice in the doctors as well, because yeah, my mental state was just so bad that I couldn't do any of those things for myself. So even though like I have treated her like a piece of dirt, she's always been there for me.
That's incredible, isn't it? I wonder, what do you think it is about your auntie that makes her, I think non-judgmental would probably be the best word for it. Like
Yeah,
kind of,
I actually don't know. I don't know how she managed to keep going with me, to be honest, because nobody else did. Yeah, she's worked with vulnerable people and stuff in the past, so I think it's just in her nature, to be honest.
and do you think you could have got this far without her?
Probably not. No.
And
I
have you
think in
seen
the
it?
last wee while I've been my biggest support, but in the early stages of like trying to admit everything and all like getting the professional help and stuff, I definitely couldn't have done any of that without her, because I wasn't in the right mental state to accept any help.
Yeah. And you mentioned then about you have been your biggest support so far on this journey, which I think ultimately in life we only have ourselves, which is quite deep and it's like not nice to think about, but really we
Mm-hmm.
only do have ourselves in the end. How do you think you've been able to like best sort of support yourself and be your own biggest fan, if that makes sense?
Don't know. I just keep thinking about like the life that I'll be able to have, and like thinking about the relationships that I'll be able to get back, and all the good things that can come from not doing drugs. like getting back to work and all that kind of stuff. It's been hard. There's no denying it's been not been hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, like this could have really went two ways for me. I'm just glad that it's gone this way, because although it's only been a month, I feel like more in touch with myself again. Yeah, and just even like having a little bit more of a relationship with some of my family. Like, I didn't speak to my stepdad, God, probably since September, and then I seen him last week and we had a coffee and stuff, so that was really nice as well.
So what do you think has been the best, like, realization or experience, anything that has happened in the past 29, 28, 29, 29
29.
days? 29
29.
days.
Yeah.
Yeah, because obviously, it's been really difficult, I imagine, for quite a lot of it. But is there one moment or like anything in particular that you can think of that's been like, yeah, recovery is worth it?
I think like it just really took me to reach absolute rock bottom. This has been my rock bottom. And I've said before that like my life is probably in the worst state it has ever been in terms of like finances, being unemployed, relationships, the drug use and stuff. But it's also the most positive I've felt in the last 5 years in regards to the drug use. So every cloud has a silver lining kind of thing. Just need to try and find the positives in anything that I can, to be honest.
Yeah. What do you think you're most looking forward to when you envision like your future and not using
Oh, I don't
anymore?
know. I don't know, just to enjoy normal things again. Like, I don't know, even just going out for lunch and stuff. Like, when I'm saying that I couldn't even get myself to the GP, on Saturday I was in Dundee, oh, I don't really like saying where I'm from. Dundee, took myself out for lunch and for a coffee, which is something that I would not have been able to do. So even just little things like that, like, is nice.
And do you think you wouldn't have been able to do it because you just literally couldn't get out of bed, or was it like triggering to be out the house?
No, it wasn't really triggering to be out of the house, but there was like, because I was using so much, I like that kind of anxiety that came with when I wasn't on drugs. I was
Yeah.
just constantly thinking about trying to get the next fix. So, and the need for the toilet. I wasn't ever out of the house for longer than half an hour. That should be it now. Is that
How's
it?
the toilet situation now, by the way? Is it much
I
better?
try and keep a like caffeine free diet to the most part, but I do love a coffee, because
Same.
like coffee and alcohol is really bad. Like it's a big irritant for the bladder. Probably every hour and a bit through the night, and yeah, maybe every hour through the day, which I'm under the impression that we'll never have normal functioning bladders again. But yeah, I just try and persevere as much as possible with it.
Yeah.
There's no pain, no jelly, no blood.
That's,
There should
well,
be a real name for this jelly stuff. It doesn't feel right calling it jelly, but
silver linings, I guess. Like, it's
yeah,
not, yeah, there's
it's
still a lot.
definitely getting better. But I've spoken to people that are like, a girl that's 9 months clean, her bladder's still like really badly affected. A boy that's 2 years clean, he still deals with some symptoms, but it's a lot better. So yeah, everybody's different, because that's a question that I get asked a lot as well. Is my bladder going to heal? I'm like, well, I don't really know. I think it'll get
Yeah.
better, but it depends on like how long you were using, how much you were using. I know people that have sniffed Ket for years and have never had any symptoms.
Yeah, that's crazy, isn't it? How it affects people in different ways. Well, going to the end of the podcast, I feel like we've touched on a lot of different things. I don't know if there's anything that we haven't touched on before I ask the final question that you would really like the listeners to know.
I don't know. My drug worker said to me the other day that you can give up. No, you can use one thing and lose everything, or you can give up one thing and gain everything. And I thought that felt very powerful for me in my situation. That saying,
Yeah.
but yeah, just I don't know, just the dangers of ketamine. It needs to be spoken about more, and it's not worth it. It's stripped me bare of absolutely everything. And again, yeah, you
And
never think it's going to be you, but it can literally be anybody.
and it's literally addictive. And I think that's
Yeah,
really one of the most important things based on some of the comments that I've read, not only on your videos, but other people's videos of people saying what you can actually get addicted to ketamine.
yeah,
And because it's not one of those drugs that you associate like you do with cocaine and heroin.
yeah.
They're even talking about now it becoming a class A drug,
Class A drug,
which
yeah.
makes so much
I've never
sense when you
understood why it's Class B anyway.
No,
I've never
because
understood
that's
that,
in
but
the same category as like
weed,
weed, yeah, which
and they're miles apart.
doesn't make any sense. And
No.
you've probably read some of the things online at the moment, but maybe it was a TikTok. It was something in the news of a mum talking about her son taking ketamine at 13 years old, which is
Yeah, I have
crazy.
seen that. I think I reposted that,
Yeah,
which is
maybe it
just
was your
insane.
repost, and I'm just like, that is just crazy.
Yeah, it's horrible. I would
Yeah,
love to be
so
able to go into schools and stuff and speak about this because yeah, they are just getting younger and younger. I had a message from a 15-year-old girl, which was really hard because I didn't even know how to respond to somebody of that age.
that young, yeah. And if there is someone listening that is struggling with addiction, it doesn't have to be ketamine addiction. What would be the number one piece of advice that you would give them?
See, I find this hard to answer as well. There's no shame in reaching out for help. It's actually brave to reach out. So whether it's to a professional or like to let your family and stuff know what's going on, then I think you're already making a step in the right direction. And just admitting to yourself that there's an issue is probably one of the hardest parts. Um,
No, it's good. And I think that's such good
the
advice, because the hardest step of whether it's addiction, whether it's like a mental health issue, whatever it is, the hardest part is admitting and being open to
yeah,
receiving support and getting better.
people around you can give you all the love and support, but like the want to stop has really got to come from within, and people won't stop until they're ready. And I think that's why it's taken me this long, because I knew in the past that I just wasn't ready to give up. And yeah, and then the penny finally dropped after a long time.
Well, I'm absolutely rooting for you. I'm sure that there's lots of people who are listening who are also rooting for you. You've got loads of fans, which as you should do. But thank you so much for coming on here and talking to me and being so vulnerable. Genuinely, I think what you're doing is incredible. And I'm not just talking about obviously recovery, I'm talking about all the work that you're doing online to try and raise awareness for ketamine, because you will be helping, well, you probably know how many people that you're helping in the process. So yeah, I wish you all the best, and keep following your journey. And
Thank
I'll
you.
also leave a link in here to your TikTok. Don't
Thank
spam Lauren with a million messages. She's clearly already got loads. But yeah, if you're a huge inspiration, and if there is anybody listening right now who is struggling, I would absolutely recommend that they go and look at some of your videos. So thank you.
Thank you so much.